Greetings, everybody. I'm going to talk in English today. I was invited to speak in English. I can speak a bit of German, but I'm going to enjoy speaking English. Apparently in Berlin, everybody can speak English. So I've heard. I'm having a small dilemma, so you can watch me have my dilemma. I'm an academic and I write books, but I'm also an artist and I perform. And I'm wondering if I should give a lecture at all, because I see it's an unconference. So I'm just trying to decide what to do, because you all feel just like an audience, invisible people, not just with invisible materials. So maybe I'll give my lecture, but only if you come near. So everybody pick up your chair. I don't know what to do with the people who are on the stands, but what I would like is for you to sit, try and imagine. It's a little bit of artwork. Try and imagine we are sitting on the planet. We really are sitting on the planet. And maybe on the planet we don't have to all sit in one direction. We can look at each other. This is a round, big planet we're sitting on, very big. And we're actually at one place on this planet. So you might want to turn all around. Those people can stay there. They're happy high up. And really just get a feeling for this one little tiny spot on the planet where we're sitting. And have a look around. I want to start with something that's not my lecture, actually, and maybe I won't give my lecture at all. So I have to wait and see. But I want you to try and see this planet as a landing place for souls. It's like a giant, it's not an airport because we are not aeroplanes, but each of us who's sitting here, including this little tiny brand new one, each of us has landed through a mother. Each of us was born somewhere. We landed somewhere on this planet. And if there was time, I think there's not time, I would normally ask you to each say where you landed on the planet. And to try and picture that place where you landed as the center of the world. So there are 7.5 billion centers of the world. There's not Greenwich Mean Time, England, center of the world, or Germany, center of Europe and the world. There's actually every little village and town and place where each person was born is really the center of the world. Because it's from that place that you go out from your first landing. You go out and you start moving, first crawling, then walking, and gradually opening your eyes and seeing, maybe not looking very much, but gradually seeing what's around you. So I just want you to imagine, it would be wonderful to share and to keep turning the planet round. Because when you do this with 10 or 20 or 30 people from different parts of the world, I work in many parts of the world, and they're often people from all over. And when you have to see each place, when each person says their name and where they were born, I, for example, was born in Bloemfontein, in the middle of South Africa, between Johannesburg and Cape Town. We have to turn the planet around in our minds so that for a moment is the center of the world. I wonder where you were born.
I was born in Halle.
In Halle?
Yeah.
In the east part of... No?
The west. It's a really small country.
Okay. City in Germany. Maybe someone else wants to say thank you, where they were born and their name, and we just turn the planet a few times to see where another soul landed. Aha! So 2 souls who landed somewhere near each other, maybe don't know each other, but started moving from that point. And what's really interesting is if you can imagine this place where we all landed and we all start out from, we also maybe brought things with us. I've had 2 children, and I was shocked with the birth of each child, especially when I saw the second one some years later, how completely different these 2 people are. And I could see that they both landed with something. They landed with so many characteristics that couldn't just be from bits of DNA. So I think they landed, and sometimes people land with real difficulties, with a lot of things to sort out, or a lot of other gifts they bring with them, maybe a lot of joyfulness or a lot of laughter. My one daughter laughed all the time. She just laughed. And you have to think, who is this laughing person? What do they want? So it's interesting to think of each of us. Think of yourself now. It's not selfish, but to really think, what drove me to this world? What drove me to this earth? Why am I here? What was I looking for? What am I looking for? What drove me to the earth? And you probably won't find out, but you might have some vague sense. There's this beautiful word in German I love, Ahnung, where you really, it's in the sound of the word itself, this vague sense, what drove me to the world? It doesn't matter if you don't find out. Because from the time when you wake up and you really start walking and looking around, what you meet is a world full of questions. Your mother's a question, actually. Who is this person? Your father's a question. Who is this person? Everything around you is actually a question, even though we don't realize it. I was born, as I said, in South Africa. And when I was quite young, I was already struck by the incredible beauty of the country, of the plants, of the animals, of the voices of the people, of the singing. It was really amazing. And at the same time, from very young, I started to experience the incredible agony and destruction and oppression that was apartheid South Africa of my childhood. And from my very earliest days, I lived with this torment and this confusion about the beauty and this incredible, it was really horror. So that was my earliest days in South Africa. When I think back now, they were the questions that called me and guided me in my very early days. And I'm going to pause for a moment because I want you to take a moment. You might want to close your eyes and just start from think where you landed. Maybe you've got a sense of what called you here to this earth, to this planet. We don't know. Maybe there are humans on other planets or things like humans. We don't know. But we are here now. We all landed here. We're here together. That's also astonishing. We're not here with people from the past only or people from the future yet. We're here together. And we all landed here. What drove you here? But try and remember when you were little, from this place where you landed, maybe you already moved, not because you moved from your own motivation, but maybe you moved because your parents moved. Maybe there was some crisis in the country. Maybe you had to flee. There are millions of people at the moment in the world who have to move, who have to run, who long to run, who have to move away. So maybe you moved for that reason. but actually try and get a sense of what your first questions were. Maybe you don't think of them until today. You haven't thought of them as questions. But what did you see in your life around you that actually called you and invited you to do something, to move? Maybe it was to study something. Maybe you had a grandmother who couldn't walk so well, and that made you decide, I want to help people who can't walk so well. So what called you out that was in the outer world that made you move? Try and look at these images in your childhood, in your early childhood, what you can remember for a moment. Before I go on, just try and find some of these images. You've all got this wonderful inner space. Daniela already mentioned. We've all got a space in which we can see memories. It's kind of here, but maybe it's not just our head, it's our heart. Try and see these pictures or atmospheres or experiences. Maybe you can't even get clear pictures, but you can feel what was calling or concerning you or not understood, and maybe those were some of the things you followed. Try and go a little bit further on now in your life and try and see, did you move from the place you were born? What caused you to move? Did you move to go and study? Did you move because of a relationship? Did you move because you were looking for something different? You were looking for something better. You were in a job and it wasn't satisfying. What were the things that motivated you, that moved you? Motivation and move come from the same word, that mobilized you in the inside and caused you to move. So that is really very interesting. Before I go on, I want to say something about questions. And I hope this is a kind of gift to you. Questions can be a boat. With a question, we can travel. We can follow the question. Rilke, the poet, said we must learn not just to find our questions, but also to love our questions, to embrace our questions. Instead of trying to just find answers, let us actually find the questions. Let us invite them in. And that's what I'm trying to get you to do, because each one of you is an amazing living being with real work to do on this planet, today and every day, during your life, if you can hear and listen first to your questions, not other people's questions. What is calling you? So a question is a boat. A question is something we can travel with, like Rilke said, into the unknown. A question, if we follow the question, we can travel. But a question is also a light. A question sometimes can help me look in dark corners. It's like a torch. I can shine this question torch in the corners of my situation and have another look. I can look at what is going on. I can have another look and try and reformulate the question. Just listen to that word, reformulate. When we reformulate, when we re-look and we try and reformulate, we're artists. We're making a form, not a big physical sculpture or a physical painting. We're finding a new form for our experience. We're trying to find words. We're trying to find language. We're trying to understand. So this interesting process of shining a light, using your starting question And maybe today, maybe even while I'm doing this, I'm making it up as I go along, but maybe I'll make some time for you to actually find some question and then see what's living inside that question to maybe reformulate it, to become a sculptor of your question. That is what Joseph Beuys, when he spoke about plastic, soziale Plastik, that we can actually plasticieren with these unsichtbare Materialien, that we can really work with these invisible materials. He said, social sculpture is about every human being as an artist who can work with the invisible materials of speech, discussion, and thought. We have them to reshape our lives and to reshape the conditions that shape our lives, not just our own lives. I'm not here alone. Look at this amazing room full of people on this planet together, just a little few of us. Look at the density and energy already in this space. When you're closer together, the density is a bit stronger. Look at this energy that's here, the potential. We are here with the 7.5 billion others to really go on this journey of trying to shape our own lives and together shape a more humane and ecologically zukunftsfähige Welt. So let's just go back for a minute to questions. So questions are boats. Questions are also lights. And questions also call us. So I want to spend a couple of minutes looking where you go through your life and you try and imagine yourself with like a light tied to you in your hand or on your head. And you know when people take photographs of something moving with a light, it becomes a stream of light. I want you to try and picture yourself since that moment you landed through your mother, because it's a real big process. It's like a volcano when somebody comes through you into the world. And everybody has had that experience, unless they were cut out, but then that's a very special experience too. We've come into the world and we've started moving. Either people moved us, either there were crises, floods, wars, famines, or our family moved, they needed work, or they just longed to be in a big city. But somewhere there was this longing or need to move. So try and imagine each one of yourself, and I will imagine all of you. Try and imagine yourself like a stream of light, moving from where you were born to where you are today. And it might not be physical movement. Maybe some of you were born round the corner in Neukölln in Berlin, and you haven't moved physically very far. But maybe you have moved thousands of light years in the changes in your life. So try and imagine yourself as a stream of light now. And we can imagine yourself first. And then I've got the vantage point, I'm above, so I can see you all. But try and imagine all the streams of light just in this room. How does this planet look if everybody actually was a light? How would it look, all this movement? Movement of incredible longing. People getting on boats in Africa, moving, not because of a war, maybe because of climate crisis, maybe there's no food, but maybe they just long to go to another place, just like your mother or father did. And we're also moving, we're also migrating somewhere to find some answers, to look for new ways of living. That's a big migration. Let's migrate from this old, difficult world to a new world. So I can see I've got 10 minutes, that's the sign. I want to take you into the third part of these questions, because they're the questions that you find when you land, that you maybe never know, but you just have a sense of. I think I came to the world to look in other people's eyes and to try and understand what is a human being, and to see how does the beauty and the pain, how does it square up together? I've been doing all my life looking, what is going on here? What are these beautiful human beings who are so difficult and so dangerous? What's this about? So I know that's partly driven me here, but I'm not sure. It's very vague. My questions from the whole part of my life, from when I was born to now, are much clearer. But there's another set of questions, and perhaps that's why we're all here today. They're the questions that are calling us from the future. These are really important questions. They're really urgent questions. They're really difficult questions because we don't know what they really are either. We know some of them. How are we going to solve the climate crisis? We've got other things happening in the world, like the fourth industrial revolution. It's not coming, it's happening now. It started. And we're sitting amidst it. And we listen to one broadcast and we listen to another broadcast and we see another article. And some people say, well, it's not such a bad thing and we shouldn't worry. The people who say in Silicon Valley that soon every 1 in 4 people, 1 in 4 beings walking around in the streets will be a humanoid robot in 5 to 10 years' time. So it's not far off. So we're sitting amidst this and we're hearing all these things. What are our questions about how this world is shaping, and also about what our reason, our purpose, our need to be here is? So for me, one of the huge questions is, what do we think about the human being? I think, and together with Joseph Beuys, that was already in the 1970s when I first met him, one of his strongest senses was that the human being is under threat. The human soul is under threat. And that was one of the things that drove him in all his work. Let us rethink, re-look at what we think about the human being. How can we live here together? What can we do on earth? What should we beware of? And what is threatening us? So I want to say a few more things about the human being. And I hope, because there isn't time today, normally I would do this as a one-day process. Even if there were 100 of you, we'd do it together and we'd share it with each other, where we'd look at the questions that drove me here, the questions I've found through my life, and then the questions that are calling us. But there isn't time. So what's important is to really think about this question. I think especially for today, what is the future of work? Is the human being under threat? And does that matter? After all, human beings are the ones that have created this, what it is now called, this big mess called the Anthropocene. So why should we worry about human beings? Some conservationists say, some ecologists say, actually the earth would be much better off without human beings. Do you think that? Is that a way forward for you? For me, the way forward, and in this I'm definitely a child of the stream of people that Joseph Beuys came from, not just of Joseph Beuys. Behind him were people like Shelley and Goethe, and behind me are also people from other parts of the world. I come from Africa, and I also studied Paulo Freire's work and Ivan Illich long ago. So each of us carry many streams. Behind me are streams of people who all see that the human being is the solution. the human being has to be the solution. And why? Because the human being is the only creature on this earth that has freedom. Jean-Paul Sartre said, the human being is condemned to freedom. We're condemned to freedom because we're the only creature that doesn't just function from our instincts. An acorn, if you plant it and the conditions are right, will unfold into an oak tree. It doesn't have to go to school to learn to be an oak tree. It doesn't have to go to conferences. It will become an oak tree. A fish or a cow, when they are born with the right conditions, will become a cow or a fish. Only the human being has to learn how to be human. So for me, that is a great hope. Whatever disaster we've created, whatever mess there is in the world, we have the opportunity now, today and every day, to start to develop the capacities that will make us able to work with a mess and to be truly human. And one of the capacities, which my lecture was going to be about, but you got something different, was about thinking together. I think one of the most important things I've discovered in the last 20 years, and it came from working with Boyce. Have I got 5 more minutes? Came from working with Boyce in 1977 at the Honey Pump in Kassel, at the Documenta exhibition where Joseph Boyce made his honey pump. And he developed the Free International University. And what I experienced there was thousands of people streaming through every day, honey flowing through the space, which was amazing and inspiring, even if people didn't understand what it was about. Boyce said it didn't matter because it would scratch on their imagination and maybe they'd think something new. Thousands of people streamed through the space. NGOs were there, activists were there, social sculpture practitioners like me were there to share with these thousands of people streaming through on all the important topics of the time. The Prague Frühling, spring people were there. People came, every week was a different topic. But I went back to South Africa after that 100 days really quite disappointed, because what I had discovered was, despite all these amazing themes and these amazing people, that no one was really listening to each other. The kind of talking that was happening was talking heads, more talking heads. Joseph Boyce was really interesting. He made wonderful blackboards and they were inspiring. But actually the discussions were debates, they were arguments, and the arguments seemed to make people's own positions even stronger, to fix their positions, and the most powerful would win, and those were the discussions. So I went back to South Africa thinking there must be another way to learn to think together. Because not only do we have to think alone, to find our questions, to formulate, to reformulate, we also have to come to decisions, to come to ways forward together. We have to develop deliberative democracy. So we have to learn how to talk together, think together, work together. And that is the work I've been doing for many years, and maybe next year there'll be another lecture, and I can speak to you about the space of imagination and what Goethe called. Goethe was the first one. He actually said there are different modes of thinking, and we have to find other ways of thinking that are not just linear logic. We have to develop ways of perceiving situations. He said we have to develop new organs of perception, neue Wahrnehmungsorgane, in order to actually be able to think in a new kind of way. So I will leave you with that and hope that you spend a little time, maybe when you go home tonight or tomorrow, and actually look at these 3 lots of questions that are boats, that are lights, and that can really guide you further on your path to reformulate and relook at what are the things that are really calling you, moving you, driving you, even if they're dissatisfactions or longings. What are these longings, even little ones, that might make you make a change, because that's where change comes from, this movement. So thank you very much. How many more minutes?
Time for questions. Ja, fragt Shelley. Habt ihr Fragen?
Ja, ich kann jetzt auch auf Deutsch. Mein Deutsch ist nicht perfekt.
Es müssen nicht
Andreas?
nur Fragen sein, es dürfen auch Kommentare sein. Also haut rein. Hier, Moment, Sekunde.
Man muss nicht zu mir auch.
Erstmal vielen Dank für den Vortrag. Das war wirklich inspirierend und es war teilweise auch ermüdend. Ich habe es lange nicht mehr so viel gedacht. Ich frage mich nur, die Menschen, die hierher gekommen sind, die wollen was ändern, aber die Menschen, die Entscheidungen treffen, wie kann ich die in einem Gespräch überzeugen oder wie kann ich diesen Samen, den du jetzt gesät hast, einfach weitertragen? Weil die gehen dann wieder in ihr Meeting, die gehen wieder irgendwo hin. Das müssen wir jetzt gar nicht klischeehaft in ihre C-Klasse oder so machen. Aber die Veränderung auch in der Digitalisierung kommt ja aus der Wirtschaft. Und wie können wir da mehr tun? Wir sind hier ein kleiner, erlesener Kreis. Be proud with you, keine Ahnung. Aber was können wir da machen? Ohne zu debattieren, ohne unsere Meinung runter zu pushen. Danke.
I think one of the important things in order to think together is to gather substance. So a little bit to see ourselves like bees. So bees go out individually every day. They go out always on their own. They don't go in groups and have discussions on the way. They go on their own. And they collect nectar all day. And they bring it back to the hive. But if they just put it there, all their individual collections of honey, like our individual experience that we can gather, our thoughts, our images, if they just put it there, it wouldn't become honey. They have to really work with it. So for me, the first job we can each do as an individual is to find a way to gather the substance of our perceptions, of our thoughts, of our inner experience. And it's a pity I can't do this process with you today, because then you'd know exactly how. I think we all know how, but we don't do it very consciously. Sometimes we write in a notebook, but there is a special process we've developed called dialogue with yourself, dialogue with the world. It's a special process of journaling that helps you gather your substance. There's another process we've developed that some of the Priomi people are using called Earth Forum, where you actually go out for a walk on the planet, you gather your substance in this inner space, and then you share it with other people. And integrating methods like active listening and working with questions throughout a number of phases, you come individually and together through having listened to each other in a 3-hour process to really then enter phase 4, which is the phase, you could say, of making social honey together. So we have developed lots of methods and practices over the years. I don't call them tools, because a tool is like a one-hit thing, like a hammer. Tools are useful. You need a fork and you need a hammer and you need a shoe, but these are much more subtle and complex things. So there are lots of practices that exist, that I've developed, that we've developed. We've grouped them together now in a framework called the University of the Trees. And the Untertitel, the subtitle, is Lab for New Knowledge and an Eco-Social Future. So we have tried to create now a university that is a mobile, alternative university. It's wherever human beings are prepared to become conscious and look at how do we live in the world, individually and together, and to look at how can we change, what do we need to change. So what is the knowledge we need, instead of thinking this is the knowledge that's already fixed and that's there. So we've got these frameworks that people can join in, participate in, do trainings in, and I think, does that answer your question? 10%. Oh dear. I'm here for the whole day, so I hope we get the other 80 or 90. But maybe for the others that gave them some bits and things.
Ich werde mal auf Deutsch sprechen. Ich denke, dass es auch wichtig ist, erstmal den Raum zu öffnen. Also ich war heute sehr spannend, was mich da mit dieser Raumöffnung erwartet. Auch mit diesem Stühle rum oder Pappboxen rumrücken. Wenn ich mir jetzt vorstelle, zum Beispiel bei Daimler ein Meeting, um mal die C-Klasse aufzugreifen, wenn ich da in einem normalen Meeting, was einfach im Tagesablauf eingeplant ist, versuche irgendwie so einen Samen zu säen, vergiss es. Weil im Sinne des Unternehmens ist da jetzt erstmal nichts, was so kurzfristig irgendwie diesen Benefit hat. Und das finde ich das Spannende heute, dass wir da wirklich zusammenkommen und auch mit so einer Raumöffnung irgendwo uns dann auf uns selbst besinnen und eben genau auch diese Fragen stellen können, wo kommen wir her und was ist uns wirklich wichtig. Und wo wir dann auch wieder so, um jetzt irgendwie, ich lese gerade noch so ein bisschen Lalou, um da irgendwie auch wieder diese Ganzheit zu entwickeln und diese Masken abzulegen und wirklich, was ist für uns sinnvoll. Und ich glaube, das ist aber auch eine Erfahrung, die kann man jetzt keinem aufzwingen, sondern dazu muss man irgendwie bereit sein und dann halt sich auf diesen Raum einzulassen. Und ich hoffe, das machen wir heute alle.
Ich möchte nur etwas darauf reagieren, dieses schöne Wort Unternehmung und Unternehmen und sagen, dass jede von uns ist eine Unternehmung und jede von uns ist eine Unternehmer. Und es wird sehr schön, wenn für einen Moment man kann still sein und nur an ihre Nachbar schauen und sehen, nicht in normale Weise, oh, a man with a black shirt and this one's got glasses and oh yeah, I know her, but to really look at this amazing being next to you, look for the energy in them, look for a sense from their face or their clothes, try and see some quality in them that moves them. Look at them as an amazing Unternehmung. They are trying to develop something themselves so that they can share this self. This is not about self-development. This is not just coaching and self-development. This is so that we can share it and make a better world together. No one can do it on their own. The big Unternehmung is what do we do in this situation? What do we think about the future of work? What do we think about the potential of the human being? And we've got each other, but you have to love and value this beautiful person sitting next to you or in front of you and see their special qualities. See what is driving them. Try and get a sense of it. And then we're working with energies. We're not working with, oh, there's a person who has a green shirt and studied that and that. We're not working with objects. We're not working with a Lebenslauf. We're working with real lives. So let's try and see like that, this Unternehmung. I think I've run out, but you've got them up.
I'm stealing the time. First of all, big thanks. To me, it was very moving, very personally moving. Just thinking and thinking together, it had a high relevance, let's say, in this moment here. And the second point is, I just wanted to share a thought. Maybe it's a thought that occurred to you in your work too, but I've been thinking a while about let's say, an alternative to Gottesdienst for people who do not believe. And how would it look like? What would drive me to go somewhere on a weekly basis and connect with people? And what you did here is somehow what I was looking for, an answer to a question, which I couldn't formulate quite precisely yet.
That's amazing. Have I got time to answer? Yeah. So, I möchte gern etwas sagen, das Rudolf Steiner gesagt hat.
Shelley?
Microphone. It's sad we need microphones on Earth. Rudolf Steiner said, now I'm back in English, das Sakrament der Zukunft ist Begegnung. And that's a very amazing sentence. And I expanded myself to say the Begegnung is first with oneself, because without Selbstbegegnung, Rudolf Steiner also described that as the Ich-Sinn. And he said the Ich-Sinn is not your ego, your little ego. Your Ich-Sinn is a social sense. Only if you are standing in yourself, and that's part of what I've been trying to do with you, and you experienced it, only if we are seated or standing or anchored in ourself can we actually meet the being of another. Whether it's a person or a bird or a river, I can't respect and value another if I'm not here. So this Ich-Sinn and this Begegnung, this is a real sacrament. We don't have to go to a mosque or a synagogue or a temple or a church. We can do it right here with our neighbor, and we did it all in a way this morning. I want to say one more thing that in a way maybe du hast gespürt. This little practice I did with you comes out of another work I did called A Landing Strip for Souls. And that work I did in 2000. And for 18 years, I've been looking for the practice that belongs with that work. That landing strip for souls came from 5 dreams where Joseph Beuys described to me how to make a landing strip for souls. He was already dead and he visited in 5 dreams and he said, we need a landing strip for souls so that the cooperators can come in. We're all waiting to work, but we've got nowhere to land. So it was a bit of a crazy dream, and I did it as a performance and a lecture for a big conference in 2000 with 400 scientists, ecologists, etc. But I knew there was a practice with it, but I never knew what it was, and it's this. And this is really a sacrament, this practice, when we do it properly, and we all do it together, and we're all standing, and we can all walk around and look in each other's eyes as we do it, and we can spend the day. It's a really amazing sacramental process of encountering oneself, all the things that make one move. It's a spiritual practice, but it's very practical because we can find questions and we can work with them and we can formulate them and we can discuss them. So thank you for that.
There's one last question. Thank you very much for this gift of talking to us and guiding us through a kind of exercise perhaps not many of us experienced before. I fully understand the speaker in red. I obviously found out that there are topics, buzzwords now going on concerning digitization, new work, all these big words, and sometimes I had the impression, well, 30 years ago there were things quite common in a different kind of package. You mentioned Rudolf Steiner, you mentioned Goethe. There were many people before us who said things we now find over the in the package of working out loud, for example. I'm a huge fan, but I don't think it's something new. It's very good, but it's just a new way to present it to people who perhaps would have big problems if somebody said, well, now start reading Rudolf Steiner and it would change your life. No way. Yeah. So thank you. And I think we need different kinds of ways to present it to people, to be, I don't know the English word, but it's anschlussfähig. Is there an English word for...
Anknüpfungs...
Something like that. German is full of words like that.
To dock on.
Yeah, to dock on. And I think that for the one person, Rudolf Steiner would fit if he doesn't know it was from Rudolf Steiner. And for the other person, you need something, oh, wow, that's quite cool at the moment. Everybody's talking about working out loud, so let's do it. And then they find out, oh, well, talking to each other, sharing things, looking at each other, oh, it makes a difference, funny. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll just end with one sentence from Goethe, because Goethe said, when the mind is at sea, a new word provides a raft. So Goethe knew that actually we have to keep on finding new language for maybe the same old things, but we have to keep on finding the right language because it's about context and place. And I will say one last thing. It was a real risk this morning, but risks are okay, to not give my lecture, which I didn't give at all. I couldn't bear the feeling of all of you sitting like this, and I was going to stand and tell you something. And I thought, actually, let me take a chance and work with you as real live people and with energy, and let's see what happens. So I'm glad I did, and thank you for being so incredibly present and responsive and full of incredible energy. Don't lose it now by retreating back into just the receiving mode, because although I've been doing most of the talking, you've been incredibly present, and I find that amazing. So thank you very much.